Hello, everyone. Welcome to TransVirtual's monthly webinar. I'm Will Barclay. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm the Customer Success Manager here. If you haven't joined one of the webinars before as well, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us. For everyone who's been attending the most recent one, it's great to have you back. Today's webinar will be focusing on a bit of an introduction into our reporting suite. So looking at some fixed reporting options within TransVirtual. We're going to show you the basics, what's there built into the system, how you can tweak some of those and how you can deliver those reports to the wider business if you need to. We're also then going to delve into just some tweaking of some reports, a little introduction to some areas, and then also I'll take you through our default reporting and just how you can utilize transit times and some configuration options there to really get the most out of it. Make sure your reporting is accurate, aligning to your KPIs of your business. So just coming through a real quick overview. So as I mentioned, we're going to touch on those fixed report formats. So within TransVirtual, there's a number of built-in reports that can be used in either PDF or Excel functionality. You'll have the option to either automate and send those out on a schedule or perhaps produce them on demand. We'll take you through how you can do that. Also show you how you can refine your report. So drill down using parameters to include or exclude certain information. I'll take you through a couple of key reports that I think are quite useful and we see a lot of our customers utilizing. And then what we're also going to do is just jump over into our report designer, which is the tool that allows you to configure and adjust pre-built reports. We won't go too deep into that. We're going to dedicate an entire session of that in another webinar next month. But what we're going to do is just open the door a little bit, give you a feel for what you can do using the system. Primarily, though, we're going to focus on those pre-built reports today and then just make sure that you can actually feel comfortable using them and know how to produce them regularly. Lastly, as I mentioned, we're going to touch on default reporting, and what I'll just take you through is an overview of how the transit times in TransVirtual tie into your default reporting. We'll also go through how you can use default reviews to include or exclude any exceptions that you need to include in your reporting or ones that don't need to be included as part of that. So as we go through, just to let you know, this will be recorded, so don't feel like you need to sit there furiously scribbling notes. Just sit back, relax. If you got your coffee, enjoy it, take it in. We will record it and circulate this with you. And our support team are always on standby as well after to help you out with any questions you have. So what we're going to do is just jump straight into the platform now. So as we go through, I'll take you through the platform. You'll see here, the first thing I always do is just remind everyone that if you're currently not seeing the look and feel that we have, you may be seeing a slightly grayer theme to TransVirtual. You may be seeing a different layout in terms of this navigation bar here with transport, finance, reports, etc. You may just need to update your theme and layout to the latest version of TransVirtual. If you need to do this or you'd like to jump into this fresher look, just go to your configuration tab and go into your global setup. Once you're in your global setup, you can scroll down to your other section, and about halfway down that, you'll see Style 2022 and Navigation 2022. Just toggle both of those onto yes. You basically can then just give your page a refresh. Some of you may need to sign in and sign out depending on your browser settings, but you should then see that new theme and update apply. And what we can do is keep you on the latest and greatest, so nice look and feel. So just quickly introducing the reports. Once you are on the latest layout, you'll see you've got a reports tab here. When you hover your mouse over there, on the left-hand side, you'll have an operational task column. So we'll jump in a sec, but this is where you can view the fixed PDF or Excel report templates. You've got the ability to review default exceptions, and then you've also got some inbuilt reporting as well, looking at things like driver data, scan data, operations or finance summaries. In the middle, for anyone that utilizes our mobile form, so if you have drivers filling out chain of responsibility forms, maybe fit to drive, for example, you can report on that and view all completed forms. You can also view any unknown scans in the system through here as well. Coming over to the right, for any administrators, you'll also see your configuration and setup from here too. So we'll dig into it, but you can actually go in and adjust your report templates. So the predefined TransVirtual reports, you have the ability to jump into our report editor and adjust them slightly. For anyone that has customer portal setups, if you've got word reset emails or you've got welcome emails going to new customers that you sign up, you can adjust those email templates that go out to them as well just from here. And lastly, you've got the ability to edit those mobile form templates. We won't go through that today, but that's essentially where you can set up quizzes or forms for your drivers to fill out prior to commencing work. If any of those do ring a bell for you and like to look into them more, have a check out of our knowledge base, support.transvirtual.com. Have a search through for that relevant article, or you can also email our support team for some information. They can help you out on that front. So for now, I'm going to take you back over though into our PDF and Excel reports. Once we jump into this section, what you'll see here is a list of all fixed reports built into the TransVirtual system. So you'll see here they're automatically sorted by alphabetical order. However, once I select a report, what I can do is utilize a report rule name to actually adjust the way it's sorted. And what we've actually done here with our test system is we've picked a couple of reports that our team would regularly run in our little fake business. And what we've done is just use the numbering system so that they appear at the top of the list. And it's really easy for anyone jumping in needing to run these reports manually. They can see them straight away. In terms of the reports themselves, there's plenty of options available. The first thing I'll flag is that your reports can either be run manually from this screen, or you do have the option to automate reports. And I'll jump into that in a sec. But firstly, what we can do is also, if we need to look at different file formats, reports produced by default will be in PDF form. However, if you need to export out to an Excel file, so you can actually use some analysis, do some analysis in an Excel sheet, later you can export to Excel. You do also have the ability to export out to CSV file. So if you want a pure data format, maybe you're pulling that into another system, or you want to crunch some numbers and your team prefers CSV formats that are unformatted, you can pull that through and adjust that from there. So depending on the type of file you want and how you're going to circulate it, you may also have different requirements for how it's provided to people. By default, we're going to set it as an email. And what you can do is pick and choose who receives that email and what is the text behind it. So what I can do is just pop in who receives the email, what is the subject, and any additional information. What will happen is when this email gets sent out, your PDF or your Excel document will be included as an attachment to that email. So this is really useful if you're looking to do some regular reporting, perhaps ownership or leadership just want some summary information regularly. If you want a bit of time, you can set up these reports to run on a schedule, and that way you can just fire off that information through the system without having to download and manipulate data every time. In regards to the scheduling of reports, if you do want to automate them, you can basically click on this settings button here to view all different options for the automation. So the first thing, you might want it to run on the first day of the month. It may run on the first or second week of the month. You can set those up for those frequencies. You can pick a time of day for it to run. And for anyone who's running regular reporting, you can pick up to 4 times per day for that to run. So that could be when you're really, really up to those, high levels of automation and reporting. You may be running regular reports that need to go out to stakeholders across the business throughout the day, and you can set those up. Just down below, you'll also be able to pick and choose days of the week to run it, which is important. And most importantly as well, you can also pick public holidays, whether you want these to run on public holidays or not. Just from a source standpoint, it means that you're not receiving an email you don't need to see with no data on a public holiday when you guys aren't working. So when it comes time to actually set up the automation of the report, you'll notice here all of my reports on this left-hand side here are orange. Now, when you look at TransVirtual and things are highlighted orange, that typically means something is inactive. And for this page, what we're referring to is the inactivity of the automation of that report. So I could very easily click View Report from down here to load up a preview of the report in my PDF format and view it from here. However, if I want this to run on the schedule that I've set up, so I want to send out my PDF file via email, and click the Enable Rule button here, you'll notice that that report, if I hit Update, will then show as white here, so I can see that's got an automation set up and I know that's going out regularly. So just a quick reminder as well, and good practice for anyone updating any screens in TransVirtual, just make sure you are looking out for that update button so that any changes you make do apply. So now that I know how I'm going to send out my report and what format, what I also want to do is make sure the information in there is relevant to the people who are receiving it, or that I'm seeing the information I want to see. So I can go from my Settings tab over to my Parameters tab. And the first thing I'll be able to do is look at the template I'm using and the date range. So we're going to jump into it a little bit further, but essentially you do have the ability to adjust templatized reports from TransVirtual. So we've built these reports for you, but using our report designer, you tweak them and then essentially have your own list of template reports to use. So if you're not happy with how our report's coming out, maybe there's one column that's not relevant to you guys and you want to remove it, you could do so using the report editor. When it comes time to trigger this automated email, you can pick from the drop-down to select which report you would like to use. When the reports are running automatically, you can also tell it what date range to use. So this is always going to be a relative date range. So if my report's running on the first day of every month, what I might be looking to do is show all data from the previous month, maybe the last 4 weeks, could be current week, even up to 2 years ago. There's lots of date ranges here, but effectively what we're letting you do is make sure that the information going across to the person is relevant to the report. Now, for anyone with keen eyes, you would have noticed just down below here, we've got an override report date option. If I'm looking to run this report manually, and I'm just going to click view report, I can set a custom date range for this using hard-coded dates. So if I want to do this, I select my drop-down. What I can do is pick my usual option, so today, yesterday, last month, or I can pick my custom date range from here. Using my date selector, I might just want to look at all data for the current year to date. So I'm just going to pick my start date as the 1st of January. I'm going to jump across into October and pick the 18th. I hit apply and just check the override report date button here. Now, when I go to click view report, that'll include all data from the current year rather than referring to just yesterday for this manual run. Now, when it comes to looking at the specific data to include outside of date ranges, what I can also do is look to include things like specific customers, specific zones, or maybe I'm running these reports for agents of mine and I can filter by those specific agents. So if you're needing to produce a report for a given customer, maybe you're running to an account management meeting with them, what you can do is just pick them from the drop down, save that report and then produce it, and it's just going to include customer data for them. Now, conversely, if you want to run a report for all of your all of your customers barring a few, what you can do is jump over to the exclude rules, pop in those customers, zones, or agents you want to exclude from the report, then run it, making sure that people aren't seeing more than they need to. So what we're going to do now is just jump through a couple of previews of a few reports, just to give you a feel for how they look and how you may decide whether to use PDF formatting or Excel formatting based off the type of report you're looking to do. So a common report we see a lot of customers using is just outstanding POD. So this could be one that's sent as a schedule, just maybe daily or weekly. I'm just going to run it for the year just to show you an example. And what you can see here is we've produced our summary report. So for every consignment in our system, we've got the consignment number, the customer it belongs to, what agent, and then some sender and receiver information, and also any expected delivery dates, etc., and the status of that consignment. So basically here we're seeing any consignments without PODs. It's a bit of a scary list. If you've got some KPIs that rely on PODs, you're probably freaking out at this moment. But one thing I'll point out from a reporting standpoint, you'll notice with this PDF document, we've got a lot of information displaying. These columns aren't great for displaying that in a PDF. What you may want to do is jump back over to your original tab, and instead of selecting a PDF, you may be choosing an Excel file instead. What that will let you do is when you click view report, that's actually going to download an Excel file for you, and that'll view that in a format where you can adjust columns, you can manipulate the data a little bit, and you can really explore that information a little bit better. And I'll just give everyone a little preview of what that looks like. They can see here, similar to the PDF version, we still have our logo, it's still formatted. However, what I can do is if I go in here and I want to adjust the width of some columns, I can do so really easily. So I might just flick that out. You can use the old double click methodology, whatever you need to do just to get that out a bit better and make it a little bit cleaner. A big thing here is you could take this data, just simply create a new tab and create some graphs off that if you need to visualize a little bit better, or you can run through a further analysis nice and easily through Excel. Obviously, if you're looking to export that to a CSV file, that's going to trim out all of that formatting. You're just going to get the raw data in a comma-separated sheet. So nice and easy if you are pulling that into other systems. So when it comes time to looking at that, just always have a look at the PDF document, suggest having a feel for whether it's a good fit or maybe you want to look at a different file format. The other thing you can do as well is if you want to produce both a PDF version of this report and also an Excel file, you've got the option to click New Fixed Report here. And what the system will do is let you pick your fixed report. So I can look at outstanding PODs. And now I've got a second version of that. And what I'll be able to do is from here, I can rename it. I might call this, label it 1 still, but I'm going to call it PDF outstanding. And then from my list up here, up the top, I've got both an Excel format and a PDF format that I can run if I want to run them separately. So you do have the ability to create extra versions of those reports. There's still the pre-built report, but different formats. And what you can also do is set up different rules for that if you're automating it. So you might have a report that you run manually versus a version that goes out on a schedule to a wider group. So just quickly, going through the list, a couple of other reports people like to look at is missing scans. So if you've got consignments, if you're a business that looks at scanning and utilizes that heavily, just from a KPI standpoint, you can get an understanding of how many consignments are going through without scanning. Nice and simple to use. Again, maybe an Excel version of that document's a little bit more useful. We also see a lot of customers just looking at things like freight volume data. So just some summary data that you might want to include in annual or monthly reporting. From here, I can just look at my volumes across items versus consignments across my date range. I've got volume versus weight. I've also got the type of freight I'm shipping and also the breakdown by customer. These are all little things just to keep stored in the back of your mind. It wouldn't hurt to sit down one day and just go through each report, do something similar to the way I've done here and just organize the most common reports I'd like to run. We've also got things you can look at, your sales by week. So breaking down your weekly sales by customer, just looking at your totals for given weeks. And you can also look at some revenue things like your invoicing summary. So anyone in finance or accounts here, you can produce a nice little summary of any invoices, what's closed off, what's currently approved but not sent out, give you a nice quick snapshot. And again, maybe an Excel or a PDF document, but a nice reminder you might want to set up to people. For the accounts team, a nice little operational reminder to just let you know if there's anything missing here. Lastly, a cool one, if anyone is setting up profit loss, so you can basically through your global settings set up a rate card against your internal delivery and pickup costs. What that will let you then do is track costs against consignments. So I can run my profit loss by customer and freight type report. What I'm able to see here is for each customer, what's the consignment count, the quantities, weights, cubics. I can see the revenue from my sales. I can get an average revenue from per quantity. But what I can also look at is then pickup or delivery costs coming from those rate cards. And then I can look at my profit and compare that to my costs. So a nice simple report. If you just want to get a feel for how things are tracking within the system, this is a great little report to run when it comes time to uprate your customers or you're looking to just do some improvements. This can be a great place to start. If you do want some help in how to set up those delivery and pickup rate cards for internal costings, just send our support team an email. They'll be able to help you out, give you some guides, help you get that configured so you can track those costs within the system. But a nice little value add if you sort of have the grips of Transvirtual, you're looking for the next little thing, tracking some of those costs can be really useful through the platform. So now that we've actually gone through those fixed reports, what we're going to do is jump over into the report designer. And like I said before, we're not going to go through it. It's one of those sections where you could spend a lot of time, but essentially what we're going to show you is just an insight into how you can start to tweak some of these inbuilt reports and make them feel a little bit more closer to what you're expecting or what your customers need to see. So from my reports tab here, I'm going to go over into my configuration setup tab. I'm going to jump into PDF Excel report templates. When I go into this page, the first thing I'm going to see is a list of all of my system templates. So these are essentially all of the templates Transvirtual has set up. So about halfway down, you'll start to see the fixed reports we just went through. In addition to that, you'll start to see your label templates, for example. So if you're utilizing Transvirtual's default labels, this is where you'll be able to view them. But what you'll also be able to do is using the report design, you can tweak them. And again, our next webinar, I'll go into that into detail. What we're just going to focus on today is just how you can tweak some of these fixed reports and manipulate it slightly to include, exclude information, and make sure that when you run these reports, it's showing in a format that you're happy with. So what I'm going to do is start to look at our missing scans report. So first thing I do, if I want to customize a template, I select that template, scroll all the way back up to the top of my screen here, and you'll see on the right-hand side, I've got the little template window here. You can preview it, but what we're going to do is select copy template. And what this is going to do is actually clone that template and give us an editable version. First thing I'll do is just label that. So I'm going to call that Will's missing scans report. And once I've copied that, I can then go over to the Your Templates page. And from here, I'll see any templates set up for my organization. So first thing you'll notice, that orange highlight suggests that this report is not active yet. So these reports basically won't be visible from the standard default dropdown when we're looking at which report to include. So this is almost like a draft stage for me. The good thing here is I'd recommend just leaving it inactive while you have a play around. It gives you a really good opportunity to get a feel for the report designer without creating too much chaos amongst your organization. So always good practice, leave that inactive, which you can see that checkbox here, until you're really happy with your report and you're happy with how it looks. So what I'm going to do is jump down into my report designer here. And we're going to open up this report and start to have a look at some of the nuts and bolts of it. So when you open up your report designer, it's going to open up a brand new window for you. And what you'll see is something very similar to your Microsoft Word layout, where you've got your word processor options up the top. So within your TransVirtual window, you've got your home, insert, you've got some page settings, layout. And just down below on the left-hand side, you've got your data dictionary. So the way the TransVirtual reporting system works is we're basically pulling data from certain tables within the TransVirtual system. So when I'm looking at missed scans, for example, the platform's looking at consignments. If I click on data sources here and expand the SQL table, I can look at information relating to my company. So the TransVirtual system is basically saying from the system, we're going to pull through tags that relate to your name in the system, your company's contact email address, and these are all different fields we can include on these predefined reports. Down below, when it comes to the actual data, we have our consignment data table, and essentially for each consignment, we've got all of the information relevant to it that you'd normally see through the front end of the system. So things like receiver state and suburb. You can see, total weights, you can see number of items. All of that information you typically see against a consignment from your consignment screen. You can decide what's included in the report. So just coming over to the middle of the page here, you can see we've got our report format and we've got some different colors which indicate different parts of the report. So this first green area is essentially just a report header. So what you'll see here, it might be a little bit hard to read, but basically we've got an area where we're going to pull through the company logo from your TransVirtual screen. So if I double click on that, you can see a little custom tag. Realistically, you may not want to change that. However, what you can also do, if you want to import additional images to a report, on the left-hand side here down the bottom, you've got the ability to include an image. And what I can do is actually just pick and choose additional images to include and pop into my report. Or other things like text box, for example. If I want to click and drag a text box and just put some hard-coded text, I can do so. A really common example could be for internal purposes only. Sounds silly, but that could be something you want to make sure you include on your report from a standpoint of compliance and legality. You might just want to have that. And so that way, any time you produce this report, it's just going to have this little label here. And when it comes time to rearrange things, what we can do is look at any text we've generated. We can pick and choose the font size, all of the formatting options you'd normally expect. And what you can also do is your typical copy and paste functions too. So if you need to include this on more than one area, I can press Control-C and Control-V on my computer, and I can paste this down the bottom of my text as well. So just coming back within my header, I've got some tags coming from the system. So we can see here, if I double click, I'm actually pulling through your company's information. So this is my organization's name. So for in this instance, it will be Matt's test account is what will show on my reports. That's a tag from the field. And then I've also just got some text below, and that's just hard-coded text. So I've just written that in. Down below that, we've also got a date range, which you normally wouldn't want to touch. That's hard coded typically, so we just want to leave that because that's just showing the date range coming from the report. And then outside of our header, we start to look at our table of data. So if you remember, we're looking at our missed scan report. So this was basically consignments and any consignments where there was no scans against those. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit further just so it's easier to see. And this orange area or this red area shows the headers for my table. So this is just text, but what it's going to do is relate down to the data and each row that we populate below it. So a couple of simple changes you might make if you're sending this to the business and you have different terminology compared to what's set up in Transvirtual. A really simple example, for example, con number may not translate well as well across a business. You might say consignment hash just for consignment number. The team know that. You can see I can update that, and that table is just going to have that header. What you might also be doing is saying, well, I don't like size 8 format. I'm just going to increase the format of that. I might change the coloring, just different tweaks to that area to make it a little bit more personalized to the business. Down below our column headers, which we've typed in, what we can also do is then pick and choose what data is going to be included. So essentially here, these are different fields, and for every consignment that gets included in the report, we'll be able to include the relevant data for that. So what you want to do is tie your tags to each label above it. So if I look in here and double click on my data label, I can see that consignment number is being pulled through to the report. Now, if you wanted, you can rearrange these. You can remove tags as well. So for example, if I really don't care about sender name, what I might do is actually select that header, delete it. And I'm also just going to go and delete the corresponding tag as well. So if I remove that, I now have a gap. And what I might want to do is pick and choose additional fields in there to include. So I might go and pop in a new field, or alternatively, I just might want to trim down my report. And what I can do is using my left mouse button, I'm going to drag all of these different tables or headers back over. So now I've got a neater report. It's going to fit more easily on my page, and I'm removing information I need to see. So from here, you can have a play around. What you can do is look to substitute. So if you do want to substitute out a specific tag, double click that tag. You'll see a list of all available information that can be included. So for example, instead of receiver name, I might just be caring about the receiver state, or maybe even my sending head port. I'm going to substitute that in. That tag now relates to receiver head port, and I'm going to pop that in. I'm going to edit this text as well and just change that to head port. When it comes time to adding additional fields, what you can do is click on your data dictionary and drag and drop additional areas as well. So I might want to include service level, for example, or anything else like that. So if we drag over service level, I can just pop that consignment service level tag there. I can rearrange, park it next to my other fields, and now that's going to show. And what I can also do is just copy and paste one of my other headers and pop that there as well. And I'm just going to make sure that that shows service level so we can see that. So just quickly, I'm keeping it very high level, but you can start to see how you can manipulate these reports using the data available to you through the dictionary, and just make sure that the information coming across in these reports is relevant and also meaningful to whoever's receiving them. A couple of quick tips in terms of making these reports nice and easy to read. A really common suggestion would be to look at your orientation of your report. You notice when we were producing a lot of these reports before in PDF format, there was quite a lot of limited real estate on the page. So what you might want to do is convert to a landscape page. What that means is you just have plenty more room on your page here to populate additional fields and make sure you're maximizing that area, particularly when something's going off across as a PDF and you don't necessarily need printing out. Could be nice and easy for you guys to include. When it comes time to including other information, go to your insert tab. You can look at things like your text box like we did. You can pick and choose imagery to include as well on the report. When you go to select an image, just draw the box that's going to appear in, and then what you'll be able to do is upload imagery to include on that. So once we're all done with that, we're happy with our report, we just hit the save button. And then what we can do is close down that window. You don't need to do anything else, just close that tab that's opened up and you'll go back to your reports page here. I'm just going to refresh the page. And then what we can do is going back to my templates, I'm just going to click on my missing scans report. And now that I'm happy with it, I'm going to make that active. So I'm going to hit active, hit update. And then what we're going to do is start to include that as my default missing scans report moving forwards. So I'm going to take us back over to my reports tab, go into my PDF Excel reports. And what I'm going to look at is, just to start with, my missing scans report. So now that I've got my extra template in there, what I can actually do is go to my parameters. I can select which report to use, and you can see I've got Will's missing scans report, which we just built before. I'm going to update that. I'm going to just reset my date range again. And then what we can do is just flick it over. And we're going to run that report. And now what we should see is my landscape view. You can see my additional information. So I've tweaked my details. My head port's blank, which makes sense because not looking at line haul. But what I've got is additional things like my service level included in there, all that tweaked information, and you can see my internal purposes. So changes like that aren't groundbreaking, I admit, but what it's letting you do is just have a little bit more control over this process. So even though we've got fixed reporting for you, these are just small tweaks you can do. And that report designer is quite powerful. What it will let you do is go into more detail, and you can really customize those areas. However, what we'd say is start small, work with your fixed reports, get a feel for what works for you, what data's in there, and then from there, just tweak those reports and start to just manipulate it bit by bit. We want you to get a lot more comfortable with the platform and those reporting before you jump into that report designer, just to make sure that it's nice and smooth for you. So in regards to that report designer and those reports, we will circulate some information and some useful guides as part of the recording that we send out next week. But what I'd encourage you to do is just jump into the help portal, have a look around. We've got a great guide on the reports module explaining what each of these fixed reports goes through. And then you can also email support again if you need a hand with anything. They're obviously around to help you out. So what we're going to do is, you'll notice at the top of the list now, I've got my DIFOT report flag there at the top. So DIFOT, just a quick recap, I'm sure everyone's across it, but delivered full in and in on time. What this report looks at is all of your deliveries that have been completed, and compares not only were they delivered in full, but also whether they were delivered in time. Now, the big thing here is your transit times will determine how the system ranks those deliveries. So by default, the system will look at your DIFOT report and say anything not within 1 to 2 business days will be considered late. However, what you can look at doing is using your transit times to define specific transit times for each route you have in your system. And you can also break it up by service level as well. So that way, if your express service level requires overnight delivery or same day delivery, while every other service doesn't need to be except for 3 days later, you can actually make sure that your DIFOT reporting is not being convoluted or messed up with that. So just quick, what I'm going to do is jump over into our configuration tab, and I'm going to go down into our transit times option. So from my transit times list, I can look at my route table, and I can set up each route that I have. So from my head ports, I can say from Sydney to Adelaide, or from my pricing zones, for example, I can dictate what is the expected delivery times for that route. So when I first set up a route, what you'll see here is I can also select from the drop down my different service level. So as a general rule of thumb, you might start with your standard service level, go through at each route, and then what we can do is from here, we can pick our transit times. Now, we're going to start with default transit time. So just say, as a general rule of thumb for my general service level, I can say what's the minimum expected days until delivery is completed? What is the maximum expected delivery? Now, this is the important one because that will start to define whether a delivery is late or not and appears in your DIFOT. You can also set days expected until first scan. So that's just another way to report. So if you have customers booking consignments, but typically it won't arrive the next day, that can contribute to reporting. You can set up some settings there. Depending on your requirements, if you do want to look at including delivery times or just days, you can set up expected delivery times in your system so that it actually looks at the delivery time versus your expectation. And then what you can also do is for these different transit times, you can actually display some text to your customers. So if anyone's booking consignments through your portal, when they select that service level, they'll actually see the expectation there. So 3 business days for my Sydney to Adelaide route, for example. What we can also look to do is base the field either by consignment date or creation date. So depending on your setup, you may have KPIs around when something created, it still may need to apply to certain rules. Normally we'd say by consignment date as default. Just coming down in terms of your transit time as well, you can add in a few exceptions. So if you want to include weekend services, if you don't service on particular days of the week, or if you do want to allow services on public holidays, you can just toggle those on for that route, nice and simply. By default, your reverse route will also just match your transit time for that route. However, you can adjust that if you want. So if it takes a little bit longer going on the way back for whatever reason, you can adjust that. But by default, it's going to mirror what was set up in your forward route. So lastly, I'll just flag if anyone does have certain customers where you've got a specific agreement with them and you may have differing KPIs compared to the rest of your customer base, what you do have the ability to do is add in additional transit times. And when you go to add a newer transit time, what you can use is our data filter to filter by specific customers for that. So in this example, if I've got a specific customer that needs to have their own set of transit times, maybe I need to deliver a day earlier than everyone else typically, I can jump into my filter, add my customer name. I can make sure say it equals, or maybe I don't have an agreement with a certain customer outside of my general rules. I could say it doesn't equal to them. And then I can just pick and choose which customer that applies to. So now I can say for these customers, only apply this rule. Everyone else apply the defaults. So that's just an easy way to make sure that if you do have individual agreements, you can handle that nice and easily through the system and still make sure your default reporting is accurate based off your requirements. So we're just going to update that with any test system when you play around. It's always good to remove your changes, make sure you're not messing things up too much. But now what I'm going to do is, now that we've got our transit time set up and our expectations, what this lets us do is then jump over into our reports table. And what we're going to look at is our default reviews. So this section allows you to review your exceptions, so any consignments that were not delivered in full on time. And you can review each consignment, see the details behind it, and assess whether that was actually a genuine exception where you guys have failed to deliver, or if there was something where it's a data issue, or you would just typically ignore it because you wouldn't consider it as an exception to the rule. So from this table here, the platform is just going to highlight any exceptions we found. From my consignment window, I can view the details of the consignment. I can see any scan activity. I can see status changes as well, and any comments left by my team. So when we're reporting through the system, the team are adding comments. It's really easy to see from here any reasons why, any issues. What the platform also tries to do is automatically detect the exception. So if your drivers are returning to depot due to bad addresses and they've flagged that from the mobile app against the consignment, that will come through and the system will automatically assign that as a reason. What you can then do is add any additional comments and you may acknowledge it, and it could be going through as an exception on the customer's end, bad data, or it could be something where you've had an extenuating circumstances. Maybe the depot was just overloaded. You're admitting we dropped the ball there. It was just incredibly busy. We had people sick. We're going to acknowledge that. That's our fault, and that'll show up in the reporting. In the case where you've just got bad data, for example, and this actually was delivered on time, for whatever reason, something's gone wrong in the reporting, you can just decide to remove that exception as well from the report so it doesn't appear in your default reporting. So coming down, if you do need to undertake any bulk activities as well for your list, over here on the left-hand side, I can select my consignments in bulk. I can pick and choose certain ones. For anyone that's familiar with using the filtering options from here as well, what you might do is look at specific customers. So if I just want to look at all of the ones for Matt, I can highlight those. What I can do is select my bulk options from here. I might say bulk exception, for example. If we've had an integration, they've sent across really bad data that caused chaos, I might just say wrong EDI data. I can add a comment. I can acknowledge the exception. We're still going to report on it, but we're just going to flag that it was due to bad data. And then I can save that, and that's going to automatically bulk update all of those activities for me. So I'm not going through and individually updating each one in those cases where you just need to bulk apply. So for anyone not using default at the moment, that's probably a good tip to remember, because you may jump in there and see a lot of DIFOT exceptions you need to run through. So those bulk activities may be a way just to wipe the slate clean. And you might just say, well, we're going to look at data from 2023 onwards. So anything earlier than that, we're just going to mark that as an exception in bulk. We'll put a comment saying, old historical data, ignore, and then we can work and start fresh with a smaller amount of data to process one by one and make sure that's nice and accurate. So once I've gone through all my DIFOT exceptions and I've made all my decisions, what I can do is jump into my fixed reports tab again. From here, what I'm going to review is my DIFOT. And for the purpose of this, again, what we're going to do is just look at data over a longer period of time. I'm going to look at from the start of the year. And I'm going to process my DIFOT report. Just make sure I hit override. And you can see here our DIFOT report will show you a snapshot of what was delivered in full on time versus what did not meet the criteria and what customer it belonged to. You'll get a snapshot of your total consignments, deliveries in full, the percentage hit, your KPIs, and then we look at the breakdown as well, so those exceptions. So this is useful where, you've actually had exceptions by our team. So in the depot, we've had issues, we've had problems with misdirected freight, we've had some errors. You also then have your customer related issues. So bad EDI data, maybe the incorrect address was provided, and then also any no fault exceptions too. So, exceptional events like third parties, road closures, anything like that. So this is a nice summary you can provide. Going through, the next page will show you performance by your head ports. And then lastly, you can also just see any exceptions included on the reporting as well. So a nice little breakdown. So that's a really handy report. If anyone does want to look at editing that report, probably good to start looking at the exceptions table as your starting point. That's easy to manipulate because it's obviously just those tags and a table. The summary information up the top, a little bit more difficult. I would say probably just stray away from that when you're first in. Wait for our detailed webinar on the report designer to take you through that. And so you get a bit of a better feel for it and you feel a bit more confident going through. It'll save you a lot of grief, I think, moving forwards. So just recapping, I know anyone who sits on these webinars a lot probably is used to seeing this by now, but just want to remind everyone how you can get in touch with us. So firstly, any configuration requests or general questions, reach out to us at support@transvirtual.com. You've also got the knowledge base there, so support.transvirtual.com. You'll see a wide range of knowledge base. We also have all of our previous webinars uploaded there. So if you are looking to get a bit of a deep dive on the finance module, you want to run through our tips and tricks webinar, definitely jump in there. We'll circulate that as part of the recording as well, so you know where to go. You can schedule in a call with our support team. So we do offer paid training, so 15 or 13-minute bookings where you can sit down and work with our team. It could be configuration you want to work on and just get some help. Or you may just want to talk to someone and go through and talk through an issue with someone. So that is a bookable thing you can do through the help menu in TransVirtual. So just go to help and request a phone appointment. And then beyond that, if you want to talk about your account, general strategy using TransVirtual, or you feel that you're not putting all of your consignments through the system, for example, you want to look at integrations, you feel that you're just not getting the most out of the platform, feel free to reach out to me, will.barclay@transvirtual. I'm happy to help out. We can have a chat about what you're looking to achieve, strategize, figure out the best way for us to move forwards, whether it's going through our support team or just a bit of self-help. We'll figure it out and make sure you're getting the most out of the platform. So everyone, we're going to leave it there. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone for your time. I know it's a busy part of the year and everyone's probably frantically moving around just trying to get everything done as Christmas very scarily approaches. So thanks very much. We'll be in touch, but in the meantime, make sure you are leaning on the support team for any questions and that also our knowledge base. Hopefully everyone got a lot out today and definitely recommend signing up for these future webinars so you can get the most out of the system and save yourself a bit more time in the day every week. Thanks everyone. Have a great day.